Hi, this is the tour of the Great Pyramid of King Khufu at Giza, North Africa, Egypt. Now, before we start the tour, let's have an appraisal of what's happened so far. So, academics call this period of time in Egyptian chronology the Old Kingdom. And the Old Kingdom consists of 4 dynasties. We've got the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th and the 6th. So we saw buildings starting with Nebka during the 3rd dynasty, which was a failure. Then we had King Sekhemkhet, who built during the 3rd dynasty, and that was a failure. Then we got Kaba, possibly stroke Huni, who tried to build at Zayat El Aryan, and that was unfinished as well. So the successes is King Josa in the 3rd dynasty and King Senefru building the bent pyramid and stone pyramid at Dashur, and also the Meidum project as well, the Meidum step true pyramid. So now we've come on to the 2nd king of the 4th dynasty, King Khufu. Khufu was born in 2000, well, he started his rule in 2589 BCE. That is 4,609 years ago. He ruled Egypt for 23 years and he built the biggest pyramid that the Egyptians ever built. Originally it was 147 meters tall, but with erosion today it stands at 139 meters tall. It had the choice of the plateau at Giza is because it's full of natural rock which could be turned into quarries, and that stone would be used for building the pyramid. So 90% of the stone came from a local source, which is Giza. That's why they chose it. It's got 2.3 million stones in the construction of just the pyramid itself. The large ones at the bottom are 15 tons, and as you get higher they reduce down to 1.5 tons in weight, and that was really to make it easier to handle. But remember, they're building a pyramid, so 1/3 of the size of the pyramid represents 70% of all the stone used. So once you've built 1/3 up, that's 70% of the job done. Other materials which they used, which was the fine Tura limestone, the casing on the outside, 5.5 million tons. Remember, that comes from the Tura quarries 15 kilometers away. They used 8,000 tons of granite, and that comes from Aswan, or the Nome of Elephantine in Upper Egypt. That's some 800 kilometers away. So wow, it's a big project with lots of materials. Just the pyramid and the complex outdoes the bent pyramid, the stone pyramid and the Meidum project. So if you added those 3 projects together, this one project has superseded those 3 projects for the volume of material. So let's start our tour. So we're going to start off down at the Valley Temple. And as you can see, the Valley Temple's not there anymore. But let's remember what I think the Valley Temple was used for. I think it was used for mummifying the king's body. So when the king died, which is in Memphis, the capital, the White Walled City, his body was transferred over to the Valley Temple, and they started the mummification process. So we're talking about the 4th dynasty. So how were they mummifying bodies then? Well, they were relying on wrapping the body up with linen for it to soak the moisture up. They were removing internal organs like the liver and the kidneys and the spleen, etc. And they were stuffing the inside of the body with moisture absorbing materials like linen and sawdust and things like that. No natron salt at this time. Okay, so that is the Valley Temple. From the Valley Temple we come up the Causeway, and you can see that some of the causeway is missing. There are no walls left, there's no ceiling left. Now, taking on the magnitude of this project and looking at pyramids in the 6th dynasty, what may have been contained on the inside walls of the Causeway, I like to imagine that it was all pictures of the king's life, from his birth, growing up into a prince of Egypt, becoming king, his coronation at the White Walled City, all the achievements he achieved ruling Egypt, and then his final burial and interment in the pyramid. So that's what I like to imagine. Okay, can't help being romantic. Now, right in front of us, you can see the remains of the Mortuary Temple. And remember what mortuary temples were for. When the king's body was interned in the pyramids, the Egyptians believed that every night the king's spirit would make a journey to the afterlife, which was the nighttime sky. And there in the afterlife were the gods, who are the stars. So when daytime came and the afterlife closed, the king's spirit came back to his pyramid, to his burial chamber, to rest, and needed to be recuperated. And the Egyptians believed that you needed to feed the spirit to give it nourishment to make that nighttime journey the following night. So the Mortuary Temple was there to provide offerings for the dead king's spirit. So when the king eventually died, a mortuary cult was installed at Giza to do this duty. Now, it's not a silent place. It's not an abandoned place after the burial. So you've got the mortuary cult there, but you've also got visitors coming. Remember the Serdab of the 3rd dynasty at Joseph's Step Pyramid, which were on the corner? Well, something similar is happening here, and it's probably happening down in the Valley Temple. The Valley Temple becomes the Serdab for a pyramid. So pilgrims would come and they would ask favours of the dead king's spirit. I have a sick child, make them better, O great king, and all this sort of thing. Remember, the king is the living Horus when he is alive, and he represents the son of Osiris. He's the go-between and the legal ruler of Egypt, the go-between between the people and the Egyptian gods. So he's making that nighttime journey to plead the case of the Egyptian people. That's why the Egyptian people are supporting this project of their god king. And remember that at this time, people of Egypt don't even have an identity. They're counted within their towns and cities as being the chattels or the estate of the nobles, the nomarchs. Okay, so one thing you should look at when you have a look at this mortuary temple is the black basalt floor. Now, why did they choose the colour black? Well, remember, every year the flood came and it brought with it beautiful black Nile mud, and that's what they grew their food on. So the colour black wasn't a negative colour, it was a very positive colour. It represented new life, and that's why we've got that black basalt floor in the mortuary temple. And remember, basalt comes out of a volcano millions of years ago. So once you've exhausted the supply in your land, that's it. So it's a very expensive item. Now, we're going to walk slightly back along this causeway, because when you do go to Giza, you must not miss this. In the Old Kingdom, in my opinion, I think they built the most beautiful tombs for the actual nobility. And along this causeway, at tomb number 7101 and tomb number 7102 are two of the finest tombs you will ever see. I love them. I've always loved them. If we have a look at the tomb of Idu, this really gives us a clue as to the position of the ancient Egyptian people. So everyone below the rank of king dwells in the underworld. So when they die, their spirits go to the underworld. And The underworld is full of toil, and the only way you can avoid that toil is by taking the Ushabti figures, which are magical figures that when you speak their names, they will come alive and they will do work and service for you. So hopefully you'd have a nice little set in your tomb, maybe 5 or 6. One would plough the fields, one would sow the wheat and barley, others would make beer, etc. So that was the position of the people below the rank of the king. Now Idu is one of the king's cousins or brothers, we're not quite sure, but him and his son Kwa hold lots of titles. And to give you an example, you've got the scribe of the god's house. Well, who's the god? The god is the king. He is the living Horus, the great overseer of all works. So this tomb and these individuals served kings in the 6th dynasty, which gives us a good indication that the mortuary cult was still installed at Giza, feeding Khufu's spirit. Okay, so we're in the 4th dynasty, so there was the 5th and the 6th dynasty, and these two tombs were built during what we think was the 6th dynasty. So he is building a pyramid for his king, plus repairing the palace, plus repairing all the temples in Egypt, and dealing with anything that requires any maintenance of some kind. So he's the great overseer of all works. They are also lector priests. Now, what is a lector priest? A lector priest is part of a cult which is involved with maybe 1 or 2 temples, but they have everyday lives as well. So they're not the unmarried priests that we have in our civilizations. They have families, lands and estates, and it's a good bet that he is a lector priest of maybe the white walled city of Memphis. We don't know for sure, but it gives you an idea of all the titles that were held by the king's family. So he could be the king's brother, his cousins, or even a nephew. So those are the people in the king's government, his closest family members at that time during the 4th dynasty. Now, in front of us, we have 2 boat pits. Now, to make that journey to the afterlife, the method of travel was just the same as if they were travelling on the River Nile. Boats were made out of red cedar wood. The red cedar wood came from Lebanon. Now, in Egypt, they had thousands, millions of date palm trees. And date palm trees are very fibrous. They're no good for making furniture or boats or doors or things like that. So the Egyptians relied on importing wood from the Lebanon, which is in the Mediterranean Sea. So they went to Lebanon and they started the trade of papyrus paper with the people in Lebanon in exchange for beautiful red cedar trees, which they could make into coffins and doors and furniture, and in this case, boats. So roughly you needed 1,225 pieces of wood to make one boat, a solar boat, which probably was part of the procession of bringing the king's body, and then it was dismantled and put into these pits. So we've got 4 boat pits, but we're not interested in that. We're interested in the trial, the experiment, which is over there on the right. In the 19th century, the British archaeologist William Matthews Flanders Petrie went to Giza and he conducted a survey. He wanted to measure the pyramid and all of the other buildings connected to it to see if there was an imperial measure which the ancient Egyptians used. While he was there, in this part of the pyramid grounds, he found what he discovered as maybe a mock-up of how they were going to make ascending and descending passages in the pyramid structure itself. So 9 times out of 10, people walk straight past this. And this is really important piece of archaeology there. And unfortunately, it is sometimes used as a rubbish pit, but it's there. And it shows how 2 connecting passages could be created inside a solid structure. Right, okay. So now we're going to head north, then we're going to head west. First of all, we're going to head north and we're going to go inside the pyramid structure itself. Right, so let's go inside the pyramid. If you look up at the north face of the pyramid, you will see the original entrance. It's some 20 meters up in the solid part of the pyramid structure. The route that's used today is the Robbers Tunnel, the tunnel made by the Caliph of Cairo in 820 ACE. They used a battering ram apparently to smash a tunnel through the pyramid, and it's 27 meters long. 27 meters before they struck one of the other passages inside the complex. So that's what you walk through today. So that's the Robbers Tunnel. If we have a look at the plan of the pyramid, you can see a subterranean passageway with a descending passageway going down into the subterranean passage. All of that tunnel was carved out of the solid structure and the subterranean structure. They didn't build a tunnel like we saw at the bent pyramid and the stone pyramid of Dashur. They hewn it out of the solid rock. Wow. These tunnels or shafts that run upwards were used by the builders to secure the pyramid after the king was buried. So this was an escape route from the Grand Gallery. In the Grand Gallery, they had giant plugs stored in the upper part of the gallery, and they lowered those down to block up the ascending passageway, which leads from the original entranceway up into the Grand Gallery. So that was going to stop the robbers, these big granite plugs. Now, to escape from the Grand Gallery, that's what this shaft is for. So they came down this shaft into the lower descending passageway, and then they put a block of stone above that shaft so that no one would know how they escaped. So that's what this shaft is for. So if we go back up to the ascending passageway, and then up the other ascending passageway to the Grand Gallery. Wow, it looks magnificent. It looks like a big cathedral inside a structure. Look how they've stepped in that cobbling effect. Remember the cobbling effect that they first used probably at the bent pyramid, then at Meidum, and then at the northern red stone pyramid of Dashur. So that was to take the stresses of those millions of tons of stone bearing down. So we climb to the top of the Grand Gallery, and there is a small tunnel that goes into the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is lined with black granite, and the sarcophagus there is also black granite. Wow. So that granite came from Aswan, 800 kilometers away. Wow. And the reason why they're so big is they got to absorb all the masonry which is over the top of that King's Chamber. Wow. So this is where the king's body was laid after all the rituals were done. But what you notice is a subterranean chamber, what is nowadays called the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber. So 3 chambers. We saw those 3 chambers in Meidum, in the bent pyramid and the northern red stone pyramid. Maybe you needed these 3 chambers for the ritual of interning the king and freeing his spirit. So maybe the ritual started off in the subterranean chamber. Remember Idu escaping from the underworld, and he was joining the procession to go to the afterlife every night with Khufu's spirit. Maybe the subterranean one was the king emerging from the underworld into the Queen's chamber. And in the Queen's chamber, the opening of the mouth ceremony was performed just like it was for Osiris, so the spirit could escape the body. The body was then buried in the king's chamber. But remember, bodies are important. They have to be incorruptible. This is going to be the house of the king's spirit, the house of the Ka. Because when he journeys from the afterlife back to Egypt, he needs to rest inside his body. His spirit re-enters the body and rests inside there. He's then fed in the Mortuary Temple. And then at night time, he makes that journey on his solar boat to dwell with the gods. And along the way, he would take relatives with him. That's why Kwa and Idu wanted their tombs at Giza, so they could join the king's spirit on this nighttime journey. Hey, it breaks up the monotony of being in the underworld forever and ever. Every night you get to escape and journey with the king, and then you return back to the underworld. So that's all the chambers in the structure. Now we leave the Great Pyramid, we head north, we turn west, and we come round to the solar boat. So it's today, if you look at the map, it's called the Boat Museum. Now, quite a okay. I just wanted to mention the word and the phrase sarcophagus. When the Greeks ruled Egypt, when they visited Egypt, they called these stone boxes sarcophagus or sarcophagi. And that's Greek, and it means flesh eater. The Egyptians never called them sarcophagi. Originally they were made out of sandstone or limestone, which is quite an absorbent stone. And the idea was that you put somebody's body inside these boxes with a nice airtight lid, and as the body leaked fluids, the stone would suck it up. That was the idea. But of course, kings of Egypt wanted more expensive materials, like we see with King Khufu. He wanted a black granite, or sometimes basalt was used as a sarcophagus. So in that case, they wouldn't have had the absorbing properties that the limestone and sandstone could actually give. So that's the term sarcophagus. Now, round the other side of the pyramid is the Boat Museum, which I mentioned a while ago. Sorry, I came off tour slightly, but not to worry. So we're back on tour, we come out of the pyramid, we head north, then we head west, around the other side to the Boat Museum. Now, there are two boat pits here, and in one of them, back in 1954, it was found that there was a solar boat in there that had been taken apart and flat packed inside that boat pit. So 1,224 pieces. It took 14 years to reassemble the boat, and once it was reassembled, they built that museum there to house the boat. Because it's in one of the hottest places on earth, it has to be air conditioned. But if we have a look at the boat, it's made out of red cedar wood. It's using a method of water absorption. So as the wood gets wet, it expands and it seals all the joints. There must have been some sort of corkage used, because in an experiment to build a boat exactly this way, it did start leaking. So they must have used some kind of corkage in between the planks. You'll notice that at the front of the front and back of the boat are carvings in the wood of papyrus reeds, and lotus flowers and things like that, because they're looking at the natural environment to get their inspiration for art. So these 4 boats would have been used for the funeral and for ferrying maybe the royal family over. Whether or not the royal family were taken back or they disassembled the boat straight away, we don't know. But they are it is a marvelous example of a wooden boat in that period, and it was towed. So it's highly unlikely that the oars were used to power the craft. It was towed by other boats. So there we go. That brings us to the end of this tour. I hope this tour has been informative and useful for you. The idea is to get enough funding to go to Egypt and to do this video on site so that you can download this video onto your phone and you'll have a tour going around the pyramid of King Khufu. This can only happen with your support, so please go and visit GoFundMe, and if you've enjoyed this video, make a donation of £3. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye for now.